Well, speaking of these 10th planet themes, let's keep going right into the UFC. And we have a 10th planet fighter who's going to be fighting for the interim belt, one Kelvin Gastelum, versus another Nigerian contender for the belt.
Next month? Is that April?
It's April.
They're coming so fast and heavy. We don't even have time to keep track of what's.
Well, get ready. The Nigerian Nightmare became the first African to win in the UFC, Kamaru Usman at 170 pounds. Now we have Israel, the Stylebender Adesanya versus 10th Planet Warrior Kelvin Gastelum. How do you see that fight? What do you think about their different styles?
How do I see that fight? I think that it's either going to be a Gastelum KO because there's going to be some cocky shit.
On the feet or on the ground?
On the feet.
Interesting.
In kind of like the same way I predicted, or wrongfully predicted, but Jeremy Stevens and Zabit, which was that sometimes some cocky kicks, some cocky footwork, and leaving your hands down, and then if Kelvin can get inside with his boxing and land, because Kelvin's got knockout power now at 185. Yeah. He didn't have it at 170. I don't know. It's down to what you say about weight cutting. But at 185 he does, and if he gets inside, he can probably catch Israel. And Israel has been knocked out before in kickboxing, hasn't been knocked out in MMA.
Been a while, but yeah.
And so I could see that happening. I could also see another decision win by Israel or another TKO on the feet.
I see it similarly. I would give a recent analogy of a fight that's fresh in my mind. That's JDS versus Derek the Black Beast Lewis.
I don't know if I would compare those guys.
I would compare them because I think the Black Beast and Kelvin have similar knockout power. I think it relies upon critical hits, which is language from video games we grew up on. And I think
significant strikes, whatever you want to use.
Or significant strikes, yeah. But sometimes I think they use the word significant strike looser than I would. I'd say a critical hit is one of those 1 out of 100 shots that is KO power, whereas a significant strike is just one that deals damage.
Don't you feel like it's a little bit underrating to Kelvin's wrestling? Kelvin has a lot more wrestling than...
No. I think Kelvin's wrestling is great. He's also really high level in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which is how we segued into this. However, I think he's more interested in proving himself as a striker from how I've seen him fight.
Well,
I think when he's forced into a bad situation, he uses his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu.
But how does his game planning go? I haven't, I've watched a lot of Kelvin's fights, maybe not.
Honestly, if it was Eddie directly coaching him, I would say that Eddie would coach him to use his wrestling and jiu-jitsu to take him down, because I've seen a lot of his commentary and he's more interested in low risk to get maximal reward. But his direct coach is actually Victor Davila, who's the co-producer of the EBIs and the CJJs. And I don't know his full fight philosophy. I also don't know how that interacts with Kelvin. I love how he coaches him in Spanish, though.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things about, it's actually in the world right now, because, and that is how fighters come into fights. They come in one way, and then there's the fighters who react by when they get hit in the face, that goes out the window and they go back to their instincts.
The planning, yeah.
And then there's the guys who stick to the game plan, even if it's not working, and maybe they stick to it too long. I'm just saying, I really haven't figured out which way Kelvin goes.
I would have to know his game plan to know whether he sticks to it. I'll tell you who absolutely sticks to his game plan. That's Israel. The one slip up he had in the Anderson Silva fight is something that he's brought up in a series of interviews since. He said at one point Anderson put his hands down, and he used this as a verb, cracked me up. He said, I didn't want to Chris Weidman him, so I told him, stop doing that, or why are you doing that? And he said, when I reflect back, I think I might have been holding back, because anyone else, I would have told them, keep doing that. Or I would have said nothing and tagged them up. So when he's retroactively looking, he said you have to look at it 3 years down the line. But that's interesting, because other than that step up, I think he stuck to the plan all the way. He could have been baited a few more times, but he wasn't. He stuck to his plan and won a decision match against Anderson, calmly and tactically. I think he can do that against Kelvin. But if Kelvin wants to take him down and submit him, I think he will.
So you want to be bold enough to give a prediction?
Yeah. If they choose to just strike each other.
Tell me what you think.
I think they're going to choose to just strike each other. And I think Israel's going to just piece him up and frustrate him the whole time.
Do you think it's a decision or a finish?
I think it's going to be a decision. I don't think he gets close enough to Kelvin, because if he gets close enough, and the closer he gets to Kelvin, the greater the risk there is. One of the things we didn't talk about is the metrics disparity, which we've talked about in other matches.
Yeah.
He's way taller and got a better reach than Kelvin.
Yeah.
So I think he keeps his distance.
But that's
because if Kelvin closes the distance, it's going to be over for Israel. It's going to be night or take you to the ground.
Right. And that's what he doesn't want. The thing is, Kelvin is like, the thing, it could backfire on Kelvin too, if rushing in for a takedown or rushing in to get into boxing range. You rush in on Israel, you can catch a leg to the face, you know,
that's
it
true.
could happen on the way in.
That's true.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch, but
same card, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. A fight that Dustin won the last time in a decision in Max's first fight.
Yeah. But
How do you think this one
Max
goes?
was, I think,
it's been a long time.
Max, I think, was like 21.
Way before he was the champ.
Like,
before he even lost to McGregor.
I don't even think Max is like, Max grew out of this weight class, in my opinion. Like, he was a
You mean the 45 class?
He was a real, yeah, that's what I mean. He was a real,
because they're fighting at 55.
Yeah, he was a 145er at the beginning. As a 21-year-old scrawny guy. But something happens as you age where you're just like, you lose your scrawniness. I don't know if it's just working out or getting older or whatever it is. Like, he has a hard time making that weight. And I think now that he's at 155, and now that he's got 8 years in the UFC, I don't know how many years it is now, I'm close to it, 6 years, 6 to 8 years, he is a different animal. And I know people say that about Dustin. They say after the Michael Johnson fight.
You loved him. You raved to me about him. I learned about him when he beat Justin Gaethje.
If they had like the NBA Most Improved Player every year, or they gave, they probably have some sort of award. Helwani probably does, or whoever. But
the nose
Dustin
award,
Poirier goes from strength to strength. He's like moves up, and he hits a new limit every time he fights. He's like gets way better at everything he was
badass Twitter profile. He's in a gown with a black belt. I love that. That'd be my steez, bro. That's my steez.
I haven't seen that. But he just like, he's good standing, he's good grappling, he's good everywhere, and he's gotten so much better than what he was. But I still think Max is on another.
Do you think Dustin tries to take Max down or tries to strike with him?
Everyone that tries to takes Max down fails. I haven't seen it happen.
So do you think he tries?
I think that,
or he's confident in striking.
So, and watching the Gaethje fight, Dustin swung with Gaethje. You know, you would think that you don't swing with Gaethje, and he swung with Gaethje and he won. So he's gonna say, "I'm not scared of the Max Holloway pressure," but Max does not box like other people in the UFC.
Except Tony Ferguson.
No, even Tony. Tony throws way more kicks and more weird shit. Max is probably the most technical.
I thought you just meant in pressure style.
No, that's what I mean. Pressure, super technical pressure. Like, he's on you, he doesn't let you breathe. It strikes coming. He's
love that.
Endless cardio. But like, accurate strikes. Some people have endless cardio and they're throwing fucking everywhere, but these are just right on them.
Do you think he has more or less cardio? As he gets bigger, sometimes when you weigh more, it's harder to move around.
Yeah, but he's
but
cutting
also
less weight.
You get more hydrated.
Yeah, he's cutting less weight.
So what do you think?
I think that first few punches from 155 takes are going to be a little bit heavier than he's used to. But I think the pressure and pace, I think Dustin is great. And I think it's going to be a great fight. And probably going to be late. Probably a 4th round, 5th round finish. But just like he broke Ortega, he's going to break Dustin.
You think
and then people are going to start talking about he's going to be a double champ. People are going to start talking about Max.
I think he's trying to get all his licks back. If he beats Dustin, I think his next fight is against Conor.
You could make it.
I bet you. Conor for the title.
Yeah, you could make an argument that fight then becomes a real thing. You know, it becomes like because then the hype train for Max is at the level where it can be right there.
I'd honestly
and I think he'll
see
destroy Conor as well.
If he beats Dustin, I would love to see him fight Conor for the title, and I'd love to see Khabib.
Conor for what title? The interim title? No, because if Max beats Dustin, he's gonna fight Khabib.
I'd like to see them strip Khabib.
Strip Khabib? I love it!
Listen, I know it's crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but just listen.
That man.
I want to see them strip Khabib so that Khabib could fight Tony at 155.
Just for the People's Champ belt?
And yes, we'll all know.
We all know that they're the best.
And Conor's not going to play. He's playing games with Cowboy right now because he's not put in the main event slot.
It makes perfect sense.
So
that's not a whole
let him fight the winner. If Holloway wins, let Conor fight him, so he gets both of his licks back.
I mean,
that puts him in the same boat as
Dustin wants his lick
GSP,
back too.
who got his lick back against Matt Serra,
Yeah.
and who got his lick back against Matt
But I'm
Hughes.
saying even the Dustin is the same storyline. Because
That's
Dustin
true.
has also lost to Conor, and it'll
The
work.
difference would be that Holloway gets two licks back.
Right. No, I think that.
And then the winner of that versus the winner of Tony versus Khabib, that will be, oh my god.
I think that's like a dream scenario.
Oh my god.
That's the more all violence dream.
Oh
Like what's
my
really
God.
gonna happen is probably gonna be Max versus Khabib, and Tony's gonna get effed and maybe move up to a bigger weight class because like they're just freezing him out.
Hey man, I think Tony could clean out the 170s too. I'd love to see it, man.
Listen,
You talk about Funk. You want to see Funk versus Funk? I want to see Ben Askren versus Tony Ferguson at 170.
Oh my
That's
God.
Funk versus
Why
Funk.
are you crazy? Why are you like this? Why? Listen.
That's all the Funk. That's the way the Funk is, man.
That's
of all
the
time.
weirdest fight. That's gonna be an Elias Teodoro fight. It's gonna be so weird, and it's gonna end in a weird decision. I'll tell you that
Man.
right now. Where
Man.
there's like 8 strikes thrown. It's
Man.
gonna be a weird fight.
I don't think there'll be 8 throwing, bro. I think they're gonna swing at each
Or
other.
8 lands.
Maybe. Big Ben trying to grab him and he just rolls and tumbles away. It'd be a phenomenal match, bro.
I think it would have
Fireworks.
viewers. If anything, it'll have viewers.
Yeah.
I don't know how good it'll be, but it'll have viewers.
Bro, he could do. There are a lot of good matchups for
But
Tony at
I think we
170.
talked about this right when the rumors of Tony going up came out. You immediately texted me and you're like, I want to see Usman versus Tony.
Yeah,
And
because
that's-
he's bench pressing, and Pettis, whom he just beat, is fighting Wonder Boy, who's top 5,
But what I'm saying, okay,
and fought for the title
but, like,
twice.
I think the reason why Pettis takes that fight is because Wonder Boy is not Thompson. I mean, not Usman.
What? I was like, Wonder Boy, not Thompson.
No.
That's some better shit,
No.
bro.
Wonder Boy is not Usman, size-wise. They're different fighters. Like
Okay.
Wonder Boy stays lean.
You don't think Wonder Boy can beat Usman?
Probably not. I think it would be very similar to the Tyron fight. With
They're different fighters. Usman comes in your face.
Yeah. No.
He's the
But
wrestling
you know-
version
you know
of Max
what- you know
Holloway
what Stephen
in terms
Thompson
of
is
pressure.
No, but yeah, it's not Max Holloway. That's the difference. It's a
No, but in
wrestling.
terms of pressure,
Yeah.
he uses wrestling like Max Holloway uses his boxing.
Yeah, but the thing is, Thompson is probably one of the best in the entire world at, and some people think it causes boring fights, but distance management.
I think if you understand the fight game, you can appreciate that top
He is
style.
distance management. Darren Till couldn't find him. Or, and he's had fights with Robbie Lawler. He's had fights with Tyron Woodley where Tyron had trouble finding him, getting to him. And I think that, would be really effective against a guy like Usman. If you can keep getting away from him, just fire from distance. But I think that they're completely different fighters, and Tony would be much more successful against a Stephen Thompson than he would a Kamaru Usman. Just because...
He's a man who takes shots. He's going to get wheel kicked by Thompson.
No, but...
Whereas Usman just takes him down where Tony does his BJJ.
No, but what I'm saying is more tied to size. And I was talking about this, and you disagreed, and I love it. There's philosophical differences, and that's fine. I'm not disagreeing with your point entirely. Is the smallest weight class you can make, for me, doesn't determine that that's the weight class you fight in, but that determines your size, in my eyes, right? So I'm not saying that just because Tony could make 145 that he's a 145er, but in my head...
Has he made 145?
He says he could make it.
But has he?
I don't know, he technically hasn't made it, I don't think. But he can make it. He says he can make it. So I'm thinking, okay, if a man can make 145, I'm thinking that's around your lowest point. Usman couldn't even make 55. I think Usman would struggle with 65 if they created it.
I think that works as a general rule, but I think individuals show that that's otherwise. So I think anyone
at
with the right
170
techniques could cut better.
Sure, I think
The
at
example I
170
gave
though,
is-
hold on, I think the answer at
Usman is a
170
D2 wrestler.
Sure, but I'm saying
Tyron's D1. On paper, that means
that
Tyron
means
is
nothing.
better.
That means nothing.
So I think the weight cutting means nothing.
No, I
Because
think
it's about technique, weight cutting technique.
no, because you could have a talent in D2 or JUCO wrestling that's a far better wrestler than the D1 guy. That's ridiculous.
And you can have people who cut weight really well. and
Right,
others
but
who don't.
size is not something
Like you were
that
telling me earlier,
but size is not
Nate
something you
Diaz
learn.
doesn't cut a lot
Sure,
from
size you
170.
don't learn. I mean, size is not something you learn, is my argument. You can learn something else. Size, you can't learn it.
But people cut weight differently. There are people
I'm
that
not
are-
just saying the weight issue. I'm saying cutting weight is not my issue.
Oh, what are you
Size,
saying?
reach, length, bigger. Usman is a bigger dude than Tony. is my argument, and that I think that in the ring, Usman will be the far bigger guy.
How do you think that fight plays out?
I think that
You'd be shocked if he gets knocked out.
They'll start striking at first. Usman will wear a couple hits, go for a takedown. Tony will invite the takedown because he's a former wrestler. He doesn't care if he gets taken down. He loves BJJ. He's like, bring it. And then he's going to get stalled like Tyron did. And it's going to be Tony sitting on the bottom, fighting back, stall, decision, Usman win.
So if Usman goes for the takedown and Tony darces him, are you shocked?
Marginally.
Marginally?
Yeah.
I respect it.
I can see it happening, but
you can see it happening.
Okay, all right.
It's a dark specialist, baby. Going back to the ADCC guys, Edwin Najibi on the BJJ Fanatics podcast said that when RDA brought him in for this fight against Tony Ferguson, for 2 months straight, he just had him practicing darces.
Right, because he was worried about the Tony darces. No, speaking of the Gracie Baja guys, I was actually thinking about this earlier. We had a Gracie Baja guy that trains with Najimi fight yesterday.
Who's that?
That was Benil Dariush, my fellow Kurd.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Iran, Syrian and Iran, I still have kinship.
So ancient Christian.
Yeah.
So closer kinship to me.
Sure, but I love him for that. It's
Yeah. He got that armbar against
submission, against Drew Dober, who's a huge 155.
Yeah, he hasn't won a lot recently, right?
Drew was on streak.
Dariush?
Benny hasn't. Benny has been
that's
hit or miss. You know, he won his last fight before this one, and then before that he hadn't won for.
But he also trains at Dynamics, right? With Struve, the giant man who just retired.
He just had Rafael Cordero in his corner at King's MMA.
Oh, nice.
So I think it's King's MMA, Gracie Baja with Honolulu Oral and Jimmy and
some Valley Jiu-Jitsu right there.
Yeah, exactly. So he's all over the Great 1-8 and LA, and he got that win. I was thinking about that just because you mentioned his teammate.
Yeah. No, that's a good connection, and it's a good way. Last time you on my case for not greeting these wonderful people in Farsi. So for us to end on a great Persian victory is a great way to end this. Unless you have any other final thoughts.
I feel like we can't do that because I think we completely ignored what's coming this weekend.
What's this weekend?
You didn't give me your thoughts on Till Masvidal.
Oh man, I mean, I almost want to say my thoughts after. I saw this really interview that they had with Dan Hardy. They all sat at the same table, and they were polite, but they were also shit-talking each other. And I was thinking in my head, this could go either way, man. Jorge Masvidal is a veteran, but he also just came off of this weird Hispanic Survivor type series where he was in the jungle wilderness.
I thought that was just Romero.
No, he did it before Romero, and then Romero just went down. He was there for like 13 weeks, bro. He's like predicting what season or what week that Romero is gonna lose. So I don't think he's honestly that focused on fighting, but I also think he's a natural fighter.
Listen, he's game bred.
So I'm not sure. And I think that this man, Till, is huge for the weight class, and I think he's phenomenal at Muay Thai. But I have a sneaking suspicion for all the shit talk we're seeing them talk, I think Jorge Masvidal is not going to brawl him. I think he might take him down like that Paul Daly MVP match we saw. I think he shocks the world because Tyron Woodley showed the formula.
Yeah, I think that could happen, but I also was thinking, Darren Till is doing this whole thing where he's overlooking, Masvidal. This is just his placeholder fight to get